as far as Goofy Scientist Guy goes, Spectre's having a party. We're walking around the room. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Mikey G. Wiz is a Spectre agent.
Why wouldn't
His
he be?
cameo is during that sequence. But then we get to Blofeld's plan. Gather up Spectre to have them witness the genius death of Bond, because Bond has been subverting everything they've been doing for years. Great. So here's James Bond's DNA. You got to program Heracles to kill Bond. That'll be the climax of our party.
James Bond. Goodbye, James.
He subverts it. He changes the DNA.
Oops. Sorry.
But he hides it from Eyeball Guy, our only henchman in this movie.
Cyclops.
Bond refers to as Cyclops, but his actual character name is Primo.
That's 2 movies in a row where I didn't know the henchman's name. Mr. Hanks and Primo. I didn't even know their fucking names, which just goes to show how little characterization they're putting into these guys. But then Eyeball Guy doesn't die. You have Eyeball Guy who tries to kill Bond in the beginning.
Blofeld sends his regards.
And then he shows up in Jamaica to snag Bond's toothbrush.
Will this sample be enough for you?
If he has used it, yes.
Scientist Guy hides what he's doing from Eyeball Guy, even though later Eyeball Guy ends up being a
Safin supporter.
A Safin supporter.
A Safinite. He's
A
a
Safinite.
Safinite.
So then also, Scientist Guy looks at Anna de Armpit and says, "Are you my escort?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" It begs the question, who was his escort supposed to be, right? Instead, something that would have been intriguing and spy-esque while also painting a better portrait of Cyclops would have started at the USB scene. Scientist, unaware that Primo is in on the Safin scheme, drops the USB and tries to do his switcheroo without Primo seeing, but Primo catches him in the act, suddenly grabbing the scientist's hand holding the USB. The audience thinks, "Oh no, he got caught. What's gonna happen next?" But then Primo says something like, "Is everything to Mr. Safin's exact specifications?" Scientist would nod with a terrified look on his face, and then Primo would tell him to finish his work because the party is getting started. A simple moment like that would have communicated to first-time viewers that something fishy is going on and that a betrayal is near, but because we don't yet know who Safin is, it would maintain that unexpected turn that the attempt on Bond's life would backfire on Spectre, and establish that it was all orchestrated by Primo, Logan Ash, and Safin. And then after the nanos are released, he'd grab Scientist Guy and escape with them. But then it's all thwarted by both 007s. A false victory that is soon after thwarted by Primo's other ally, Logan Ash. Instead, Primo is 100% Spectre, and yet out of pure convenience, they were never able to get a sample of his DNA, even though he's been Spectre for years. And then Safin sends Logan Ash to recruit him for no reason other than to keep him in the plot in one of the dumbest scenes in the movie.
Logan Ash, pleasure meeting you. I am sorry for your loss. I believe you know who I represent and work for. We have an opportunity for you.
Because remember, like when he first shows up, when they steal the stuff, he's one of the guys that Safin's like,
They're coming.
Who?
Spectre.
they're going to grab this thing from you and you're going to go along with it. Okay, so Cyclops is Spectre, right?
Yeah.
And then he just shows up with Safin at the end and you're like, what?
Shouldn't you have died? Shouldn't you be dead?
Right.
You were a part of Spectre at the time. You should be dead. And then later, Madeline's like, he let you join. I'm like, yeah, but before you would have joined Safin, you would have already been killed.
Do you trust him? He made me kill your last master. Why do you think he let you join him?
But then at the same time, why did they bring on Primo? What did they need him for? He's more of a liability than an asset, having killed all of his people. Recruiting him for no reason only led to Q finding Logan Ash because Primo was dumb enough to livestream his recruitment meeting to his then boss, Blofeld, whose eye had been confiscated by MI6.
A bionic eye, which we've now retrieved.
The line alone is enough to kind of indicate that we've come full circle into Goofy land. The line of
Blofeld's eyeball unlocked.
It's like, okay, we're officially in Goofy world. Did Safin and Ash not anticipate that the eye might be confiscated after the party? Didn't they know Blofeld had linked eyeballs with Primo, considering that's how they killed Spectre in front of Blofeld? Wasn't that the point? He was only a loose end at that point. They should have let Primo die with everyone else.
Cheesiest line in the movie.
Cyclops. We ran into each other in Italy.
That was an eye-opening experience.
Had that guy died before, that would have been a Bond joke.
His line for the death of him, when he killed him with the EMP, I thought that was a cheesy one.
Yeah, that was
like,
cheesy. That was that cringe.
That delivery was...
That, in fact, is a Bond joke. Our one Bond joke.
Sounds like you're in a rugby scrum.
I just showed someone your watch. Really blew their mind.
But then at the same time, you're sitting there being like, hang on, the nanobots is one thing. Like, why didn't it kill the nanobots? That's one thing. But also, why wouldn't the EMP then mess with Bond's comms? Like, wouldn't it blow out his earpiece? Like, right after that, Q is talking to him. It's inconsistencies like that where you're just like, okay, this is made for just like general audiences and not anybody with a brain. And that was kind of the theory on Spectre and also Skyfall.
And how strong is it?
It's fairly strong.
Fairly strong? What's that mean?
We haven't had the chance to test it properly. Just be careful.
So they get Bond to go to the party to get a scientist guy that is also on Safin's team.
Valdo Obrachev.
You're gonna say you never heard of him?
Never heard of him. You never heard of him? Didn't he defect during your tenure at MI6?
But the whole thing about getting Bond to the Spectre party is very loosey-goosey. What did the CIA need from Bond specifically?
You're really the only guy for the job. You're the guy.
You have Logan Ash being like, you're the guy, you got to go to the party. If it was, hey, Bond, this scientist guy that defected during your tenure, he'll only let you scoop him up. Like, he insists that the famous James Bond 007 pick him up in Cuba after this party. Like, he'll be at this party and he insists that it be you. Like the living daylights.
He expressly asked for you to protect him.
Why me?
He's under the impression you're the best.
They insist that the famous 007 be there to scoop him up. There literally is no reason for Bond to come out of retirement to go do this thing at all. There's nothing pulling him there. What if Bond just said no? Then Spectre's plan would have failed, and then also Safin's plan would have failed. It's like all these things relied on each other for it to happen, and it just happened because the script needed it to happen.
The only thing that came to my mind, because the way that Leiter talks about it, he's like,
our elected leaders aren't playing nice in the sandbox.
And it was almost like, we need to get this weapon. Like that seemed like the motivation. In the same light as when Bond would be in other missions where his superiors are telling him, no, you're not going to go do X, Y, and Z. You're going to stay in your lane and let whatever else happens, but that's not your mission. You can't go on it. My thought was that Leiter is doing the same thing where his superiors are telling him, no, we're not getting X, Y, and Z. And he's like, no, we got to get the thing. Meanwhile, Logan Ash is like, we can't do it, but you know who would be great to do it? Is that James Bond fella. And we can like entice him because it's supposed to be a Spectre thing.
He's leaving out the best part. Spectre.
I have a contact there. Says they're gathering.
Coincidence?
What makes Bond the only guy for the job? What element is here that would motivate happily retired James Bond to get back in the game? So it's good that he tells Felix no, but then because the new 007 tells him not to interfere, which he already didn't want to do, he then feels compelled to call M and talk shit. And then comes to the conclusion that he wants to steal back the stolen weapon that he knows came from a secret MI6 lab because the famous James Bond, typically motivated by duty to king and country, suddenly wants to join up with Felix and the Yanks to not help them with some random drug smuggling problem like in Live and Let Die, but to actively work against MI6 and Her Majesty's government? By all appearances, Nomi had everything handled, so what compelled Bond to go to that party? He has a slight suspicion that M did something wicked.
What have you done? M helped me build it.
But at the end of the day, that thing is still in England's best interests, and working against that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I've dedicated my life to defending this country. I believe in defending the principles of this.
Stay out of it. This has nothing to do with you.
It does. It's Spectre.
Well, if that's true, then why are you retired, Bond? If you still care about Spectre, why aren't you roaming the Earth hunting down the remaining members George Lazenby style instead of living in GoldenEye? Or did you already forget that they blew up your old girlfriend's grave and split you up from your baby mama at the beginning of the movie? By all accounts, Bond didn't give a shit about Spectre after he captured Blofeld. So all in all, this movie is just screaming for some personal stakes.
Who's the birthday boy?
Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Is he here?
No, he's...
Make your way, follow the music.
He's in London in prison.
This is all classic Mikey G. Wiz writing where they don't care about the logic of anything so long as there's some surface-level compelling turn, i.e. when the nanobots kill Spectre instead of Bond.
You walked me into a trap, didn't you?
What trap?
Spectre's dead. Sit. Who's dead? All of them.
And then again, 5 minutes later, when Logan Ash does his thing. At this point, literally everything is just dumb. As soon as he had the scientist and the weapon, why didn't Logan Ash just pull his piece and put down Bond and Felix while he's not under suspicion? Oh, right, because we gotta keep up the manufactured intrigue.
You were never the intended target.
He was a target? Why?
I changed the DNA like we decided. Now the plan is complete and I'm confused.
Who is we?
He is not allowed to do
M
this.
make you build this?
He is out of line here, Felix.
Did M
Ash.
order you to kill Spectre?
Don't answer that.
Is M behind this?
He is out of line.
Felix!
Ash, shut your mouth!
So what was Blofeld's plan to get Bond there? Again, Blofeld, not Safin. Was he aware of what Ash was doing? Safin sent Logan Ash to recruit Bond to go to this party. Blofeld is trying to attract Bond so he can kill him, but then also Logan Ash and company are trying to get Bond to do the thing so that then Bond will be there so they can do the switcheroo and kill Spectre instead of Bond. And it's just like, what was Spectre/Blofeld's plan if Bond was just like, no, I'm not going to show up. I just want to be in retirement.
The biggest part of the problem is that they never establish, is Logan Ash a double agent? Like, could he have been playing 3 different sides all at once? And we don't know that. We're never told that.
It's heavily implied that Logan Ash told Blofeld because of this odd glance between scientist and Ash.
Blofeld? How did he know I was going to be there?
As if he recognizes him or something. But seconds later, scientist introduces himself to Logan Ash, so clearly he had no idea who he was.
I'm with Safin. You understand?
Yes. I am Dr. Obruchev.
I know who you are.
So here's another one of those very simple and obvious little changes that would have clarified things. If the eyeball recording scene between Logan Ash and Primo had been recorded before the death of Spectre, it could have specifically included Ash telling Primo, and therefore Blofeld, that Bond was going to show up to the party. Maybe at that same moment he gives Primo Bond's toothbrush as proof of this. What would have been even cooler would have been if Ash and a traitorous Primo had planned the whole interaction out ahead of time to specifically manipulate Blofeld, getting him to let his guard down and open himself up to the Heracles attack on Spectre. But the weakest part of all is that for some reason the existence of Heracles really pisses off Bond.
Why didn't you shut it down? Why didn't you shut Heracles down?
I answer to the interest of my country, not you.
And to Felix Leiter?
I certainly don't answer to Felix Leiter.
Perhaps because he's dead.
Oh my God, Bond, who are you? Don't you remember coming to terms with the big picture several movies ago? You really think M gives a f that your best friend is dead?
Hardly the big picture, wouldn't you say?
And speaking of which, don't get me wrong, I like the Craig vs. Felix Leiter just fine, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't feel anything when he dies because his overall significance in these movies is extremely limited and their connection is drastically less realized than in the original series. The most dire thing that we as an audience have ever been through with this Felix Leiter is a poker tournament, and yet they say things like,
Come on, Felix. We've been worse than this.
But regardless, Leiter wanted to steal Heracles from your country, Bond. Technically, that makes you a traitor, dude. M totally has grounds to let Nomi flex her license to kill on your ass. Had he said he wanted to destroy it so nobody could misuse it, I would at least understand where you're coming from. But all Felix ever said was,
help us get this into the right hands.
Oh, what? And you're the right hands?
Which, for all intents and purposes, they are the exact same hands that you seem to be so disapproving of.
What was I working on? Something he should have shut down years ago.
We could double the runtime of this review talking about the morality of Heracles in general, but as far as the British government is concerned, it's a fantastic idea up until the damn thing gets stolen. It's like the atom bomb. If we don't make it, somebody else will, and they'll use it against us.
Obruchev is working for someone who managed to kill all of Spectre.
It took out the most evil cabal of sociopaths the planet has ever seen, all in about 2 minutes. And this bitch-ass Bond is whining about it.
Whoever stole your weapon used it to wipe out Spectre instead. Now your weapon is on the run, and nobody seems to know who has it. So you can imagine why I've come back to play.
And then Bond claims that this is why he's come out of retirement, even though his stated reason for coming out of retirement happened after he'd already come out of retirement. So again, I say that this movie is just gagging for some goddamn personal stakes. It's messy. It's fucking messy.
Yep.
Yeah.